Welcome to FoxTales Movie Club. I'm Sebastian Fox.
And I'm Tony Sherman. Every video we take a chosen movie and lead a discussion on our thoughts and opinions.
We'll be getting into the characters, plot, and technical achievements with no regard for spoilers.
So if you haven't seen this movie and don't want to hear said spoilers, you have been warned.
Also, stick around to the end of this video to hear the topic for next video.
This week's video is The Princess Bride.
So The Princess Bride is a movie directed by Rob Reiner and starring Carrie Elways, Robin Wright, Mandy Patinkin, and a host of others.
Yeah, quite a list of actors and actresses.
Yeah, so The Princess Bride is set up as a frame story where it starts off with just a kid in a more modern day setting, and his grandfather's reading him the story of The Princess Bride.
Right, reading the book that his father had read to him and his grandfather had read to his father whenever they were sick. So carrying this tradition of reading to the sick children.
Something I noticed this time, or the last watch through, it's actually Christmas time.
Oh,
when he's reading
really?
it, yeah, the house is outside. You can see that they have Christmas lights on them. So
Okay.
I never noticed that this was a Christmas movie before.
This is a Christmas movie. We'll have to add it to the list along with Die Hard.
Yeah.
And
Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3 and other very well-known Christmas movies. Yes. I did think it was interesting that the grandfather's reading to the grandson, whereas like the tradition had been the father reading to the son. So made me wonder,
they never mention a dad at
the
all.
father character, right? So I don't know if he's out of the picture or whether this is just, it looked like it was during the daytime, so maybe he's at work. And the grandfather was able to just step in. Doesn't really go into any detail about any answer to that question.
No.
Just something that caught my attention.
All right, so getting into the story of the actual Princess Bride.
Right.
We open up with Buttercup and Wesley on a farm.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting here. Another thing with missing parents.
Right. Yeah.
You don't see any parents there.
You don't see any parents. You don't see any other characters on this farm. You don't see any other farmhands. You don't see any other people milling about or anywhere. So it's very sparse kind of opening.
Yeah.
Going to the title, The Princess Bride, it starts off and Buttercup's not a princess at the moment, so it's kind of like an interesting title where she's not even a princess bride at the start of the film, and even at kind of like the end of the film, she still wasn't really a princess. Not getting...
I don't really know what constitutes a bride. Like, you actually have to get married to be a bride? When do you...
Yeah, that's true. Well, I guess maybe she was the princess bride, but never actually became the princess wife. Maybe princess.
I also feel like you have to get married to become a princess.
That's true. So, I don't know. This is a misnomer, perhaps. Maybe this shouldn't be called the Princess Bride, but the farmhand's girlfriend for most of the movie.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Did they actually get engaged at the beginning of the movie before? I guess Wesley went off to get his fame and fortune.
Well, I think engagements are much more recent. I don't think they really had those back in
a modern thing.
So they were definitely agreed to be together.
Yes, betrothed.
Yeah.
But he never gave the non-existent father the necessary cow or whatever it is that they.
Well, he did leave at the beginning to make a fortune.
That fortune.
So maybe that was what he was doing, working up to afford that cow.
Searching for that cow. Yeah. Another thing that I noticed at the beginning of the movie, before we see Buttercup and Wesley starting to fall in love, we see kind of this set of threes where Wesley responds with "as you wish" 3 times, and it's at that third "as you wish" that they mention that Buttercup finally realized that she truly was in love with Wesley, which is what they say he was meaning when he was saying "as you wish." Kind of an interesting way to say "I love you" instead of, like, I think it's so beautiful that in The Princess Bride, instead of saying "I love you," they say "as you wish," which apparently translates into "I love you," I guess.
Yeah.
Beautiful the way language works like that.
So their relationship throughout the entire movie is kind of interesting, because at the beginning it starts off with him being kind of just working for her, like
servile.
But then throughout the movie you just see their relationship in very different ways. Like between him as the man in black and her, it's a very different relationship. And then even after she finds out who it's
it was interesting. A question that I was reading about and trying to think about as I was watching the movie was the treatment that Wesley was portraying towards Buttercup fair? Was she unfaithful by going forward and marrying the prince? And I feel like Wesley's a little harsh. Harsh towards her. I mean, she presumed him to be dead, and she mourned him, but he kind of jumps to the conclusion that, no, forget about him, and the very next day goes on and moves on to the next person.
But I do kind of get that, like, because he's been focusing on getting back to her for 5 years, just with that focus. I can understand him kind of, now his plan isn't really going the way he wants it to, so he's kind of lashing out.
That's true.
I understand where he's coming from.
Oh yeah, I do as well. But yeah, it seems a little harsh. I wonder how long he had been watching. Like, when had he come back? Because we first see him reconnecting with Buttercup when they're on the boat and there's the shrieking eels, and he's catching up. So I'm wondering, how long had he been following after her? He'd already kind of planned, my boat with my crew, this pirate crew is waiting for us on the other side of the forest. So he clearly had thought about this and planned this. So I'm not really sure why he wasn't able to kind of jump into action before she got captured by Fezzik and Inigo.
Yeah, I guess he was still working for that fortune even after he became the Dread Pirate Roberts.
I guess so.
And maybe it was just timing, although I don't know how he would have known where she was.
Right, where she was exactly. Yeah. I guess that's just kind of the way the plot works sometimes. Is, well, we have to have some kind of conflict in the story, so let's have Wesley show up just in time to rescue her after she's already been captured, and now he has to go and chase after her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right. So now let's get into the 3 kidnappers.
Yes.
Very interesting characters here.
Yeah, 3 very different kind of characteristics and people. Vicini just being kind of this cold-blooded, meticulous, well, let's go and start a war. This is what we were paid to do.
Yeah.
And Inigo Montoya just kind of sees it as paying the bills. And Fezzik the Giant just seems to kind of be going along for the ride. He was unemployed in Greenland. So like, okay, well, someone here to tell me what to do, where to go. So very different characters, but they seem to work well together.
Yeah, I think the movie definitely does a good job of also just endearing the audience to them. Because like they're capturing the main character at this point,
right? But
you still want them to not succeed, but I guess.
But you can't help but like them, especially Inigo's and Fezzik's poetry rhyming kind of play going back and forth, and how they kind of torment Vicini with this rhyme scheme. So like even with them going along as these antagonists, you kind of team up with them against kind of like the worst antagonist at that point with Vicini. So yeah, definitely an interesting characterization there. And
then they each have their own talent, as we see when the Man in Black catches up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We see at the with the first interaction, we have Inigo Montoya fencing with him, and again we come back to like kind of this pattern of threes where he goes up against Inigo Montoya, and then he goes up against Fezzik the Giant, and then he goes up against Vicini the Sicilian, I guess he is.
Yeah,
Sicilian. Yeah. So we see that same kind of pattern that's kind of common to fairy tales and this kind of story. Whether we want to say this is truly a fairy tale or not.
We can get into that later.
Yeah, might get into that some more later. But yeah, so we see this very extensive and very well planned out sword play, this fencing scene.
Yeah.
And when I was reading about some of the contemporary fight scenes and fencing scenes and sword play and all that kind of stuff, it tended to be very close up, where they would have the actors and they would have the faces and they'd be close up and show some action, and then when they would zoom out and pan out and show a more wide shot of the fighting, it would be the stuntmen or other actors. And they didn't do that here. So
I definitely like that you really see the two of them fighting. Yeah, this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's just the amount of effort that went into making this work from both the actors and the technical crew and just everyone.
Right, yeah. So very, very, very interesting. I noticed in some of the stunts and jumps and stuff, you can see the mats that they're landing on,
just covered with the dirt,
with a little bit of dust and sand and dirt. And I'm thinking to myself, in a more recent movie, they would CGI that so you couldn't be able to see them landing there. They would make it. Maybe they would cut to a different camera,
use wires and all that.
Right, exactly. So like, I thought it was like very nice that they kept it that way. So it kind of made it feel you could see the amount of effort that they were putting forth into these scenes and these tricks and these acrobatic stunts.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that kind of happens a lot in this movie, because the special effects, like, they're not amazing. Like, you can tell that they're fake, but it really works towards this movie's benefit. It just you can kind of tell how much work they've put into it.
Yeah.
But like the shrieking eels kind of didn't look exactly real, and
just like some kind of rope, something or other.
And then them climbing the cliffs in Insanity. I thought those shots were interesting.
Yeah, that is something I wonder exactly how they set up that shot, because when it was the camera further away, it was just like hand over hand. They were just zooming up this cliff, and then when they did the closer shot, it was a real struggle you could see. So I'm not sure exactly what technique they used to be able to shoot that. But I thought,
because the wide shots, I'm pretty sure it was like a stuntman with just dummies going up the rope.
Yeah.
But the close-up shots, I don't know how they did it, because you see Fezzik like physically
exerting himself.
But then the background's going down as it should be.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they would have shot that. Like if he's on like a platform that's raising up, maybe
that's possible. Like maybe they have him like going up, and behind him they have the scenery behind him, maybe like scrolling down or something.
Maybe it looked like it was actually
real
scenery.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm not sure either. Yeah, very interesting.
Going back to the sword fight, I also like how they interweave the humor into it, kind of, because Inigo and the Man in Black kind of start before the fight, kind of set up this repartee
as well. Yeah, start fighting with words before they even start fighting with swords.
And then you have Inigo pull up, start fighting with his left hand.
Yeah. And Wesley, the Man in Black, as we know him at that point, also starts off with his left hand.
Yeah, there I found it interesting, because Inigo's scabbard is on his right side, so when he pulls it out, he switches hands. But Wesley's actually isn't. It's actually on his what would be his left side.
Oh, I didn't.
Even though he's right-handed.
Yeah. So it's an interesting detail there. So like he'd already maybe kind of planned. Let me play this way.
Yeah.
To kind of start with this mind trick. Yeah. It's potentially true. Yeah. So while they're going through and beginning their fencings, they comment on each other's apparent fighting styles.
Yes.
And they mention some different names of proposed fencers, I suppose.
Or Benetti's defense.
Yeah.
Capafeo,
yeah. And apparently, when I looked it up, those are actual people who've written about fencing and have developed different techniques. And so, in the context of the fight, it seems to work out and seems to make sense, talking about the terrain and talking about, okay, well, I feel like I have this advantage, but then you can respond by fighting a little bit more closely and trying to close in the gap. So kind of an interesting tidbit of information that just feels like they're talking about their expertise in fighting while it's actually very accurate.
Interesting. Yeah. So Wesley's wearing a mask throughout this entire portion.
Yeah.
Why do you think he's wearing the mask?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like when he first meets back up with Buttercup, he's trying to get a feel for where she's at.
Yeah.
So maybe he doesn't want to lay out his hand too soon. Wants to try and find out where exactly her feelings are and her emotions. So trying to understand where she's coming from. But at the same time, I guess it also maybe is playing on the audience's expectations of, who is this person? We don't know about this person.
Yeah.
So who could this be? But, of course, thinking about it, it's like, well, who else could it be other than Wesley?
Yeah.
I
also find it interesting during the fight between Inigo and the Man in Black. Inigo asks who he is, and he won't say, he won't even say that he's the Dread Pirate Roberts.
The Dread Pirate Roberts.
It seems like he gives something there, but he's just very just defensive about his name.
Yeah, not wanting to let anything out. Yeah. Kind of strange that he's wanting to just completely hide who he is as a character. But I mean, I guess you could presume that he's the Dread Pirate Roberts, since they had been talking about that person prior to that. But why he would want to keep that hidden from Inigo Montoya on this one-on-one kind of battle, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So the character of Inigo Montoya,
right?
Before this fight, we learn about his backstory.
Yes.
After he asks about Wesley's right hand.
Mm-hmm.
Five fingers
about
on his right hand.
The 5 fingers versus 6 fingers. Right. Yeah.
And also, we were talking about Wesley being very secretive about his identity, but here Inigo just goes straight ahead and goes right into his backstory, about who he is and what he's after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. If we see right as they're fighting, you seem like a decent fellow. I hate to kill you. You seem like a decent fellow.
I hate to die.
But they were just talking about their life story. If you were about to fight someone to the death, maybe that's the perfect time to completely open up about who you are and your ambitions and dreams and what it is that you're wanting to do with this revenge plot. But at the same time, it seems like, why not just get on with it? But yeah, we do get a very nice story of Inigo Montoya and what it is that he's wanting to do and what he's been working for 2/3 of his life or so.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of drive in his character to try and find this six-fingered man.
And I also like how at that time, like after he gets the Man in Black up from the cliff,
Right.
and he gives him time, it just kind of shows that he's a man of honor, even though he's in this line of work. He's just paying the bills.
Paying the bills, yeah. So definitely seeing that he has that code of conduct that he tries to follow.
That's something that Fezzik also shares. Because Vicini says to face the Man in Black his way.
Right.
Which tells him that his way is to just hit him with a rock without any warning.
Right when he comes around the corner, which of course Fezzik says, my way.
Very sportsmanlike.
It's not very sportsmanlike, yeah. So he misses on purpose to be able to try and give this Man in Black a more honorable fight, so to speak, one-on-one.
Although even after they start,
the
Man in Black kind of rushes him and he kind of lets him feel like he's doing a good job, but it feels like at that point Fezzik still seems like feels like he knows he's gonna win.
He's gonna win, yeah.
So it seems kind of weird that it's still not exactly sportsmanlike.
Yeah. He knows he has that advantage. They're fighting hand to hand.
Yeah.
And he knows he's got a good 150 pounds on him probably. So he's got another however many inches or feet on him. This brute of a man, and he goes on to very quickly go from, I feel pretty confident in being able to overpower this one person, to thinking, fighting half a dozen men is quite different from fighting one, and this wily, evasive Man in Black is very quickly gaining an upper hand. So we see, even though Fezzik also has this code of conduct that he wants to follow, he, to his honor, to his credit, doesn't try to really fight dirty, even throughout when he starts to lose consciousness and lose that fight, which is very different from how Vicini treats their battle.
Yeah.
Where
from the beginning he's saying that he's going to kill Buttercup if Wesley comes any closer.
Right. So he already starts off playing dirty and saying, well, I'm just going to kill her. I'm going to kill her anyway. So if you get in closer, I'll just be done with it, and then we're good. And so even during this battle of wits, he knows that he can't best Wesley in any kind of fencing or fighting tactics, and he can't really beat him in any kind of strength contest. So he thinks, well, let me use my brains. And
well, he actually says that they shouldn't go up against them mentally, because he says that you're no match for me.
That's true.
Mentally.
Yes, yeah, no match for Vicini, and even up to the end of their battle of wits, he doesn't follow this code of conduct where he tells Wesley, "What is that over there?" and then switches the cups.
Although Wesley didn't really follow the code of honor there either, pouring the poison in both goblets, giving Vicini the false information. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, started off with a losing game for Vicini. So no matter which cup he would have chosen, Wesley knew he was going to have that upper hand throughout. Yeah.
I think this scene's very interesting because Vicini brings a full spread of fruit and cheese and bread and wine to a kidnapping.
Yeah.
And he also only has 2 goblets.
Right.
When he has 2 people that are with him.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe this is one of those the Dark Knight things where this guy was supposed to drive the bus,
right? And
they just kill people off as this plot moves forward, potentially.
Maybe.
Yeah. As we see Count Rugen and Prince Humperdinck trying to follow after the kidnappers and the Man in Black, we see them investigating the different scenes of battle and they're drawing conclusions and they're gathering information about what they think has happened. And when they get to the scene with Vicini and where Vicini and the Man in Black, Wesley, were fighting over this goblet, we have Prince Humperdinck sniff the little capsule, this tube, and says, "Iocane powder, I bet my life on it." Well, if it's odorless and tasteless and completely undetectable, maybe that's how he knew it was iocane powder. Because what other white powder could possibly be odorless and tasteless, right?
Yeah,
so
not sure about that.
Yeah, very, very strange.
Yeah, the character of Prince Humperdinck is kind of interesting to me because he's not really given a bunch of strengths.
Yeah,
he's just like everything that he does. He's just a very cowardly man.
Right.
But he is given the one strength of being able to track very well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's able to track and he's able to follow them. But when at the end of the movie he does go and face Wesley, he very quickly resigns to his fate.
Yeah.
And then even still says, "Oh, I knew you were bluffing."
Yeah.
But still resigns himself to, well, okay, I'm just gonna give up. I don't want to be hurt. So like he doesn't even put up very much of a fight. Yeah,
I guess you can kind of tell throughout the movie that he's been just kind of given everything throughout the entirety, and no one's really stood up to him because he says at the end that Wesley was the first man who ever insulted him.
Yeah. We see even Count Rugen when he comes up at the end of the movie to Inigo Montoya and Fezzik and Wesley, and he sees Inigo Montoya slice through those henchmen, so to speak. He also turns tail and runs away, trying to escape from Inigo Montoya. So we see another antagonist who doesn't really want to try and put up a fair fight.
Right.
So tries to set up a scene where he's able to throw this dagger and catch Montoya off guard. So we see that code of conduct between the various antagonists be very fluid between one antagonist to another antagonist, each of those different characters.
Yeah, even when the Wesley and the two start the invasion of the castle,
right?
They start off with showing all the guards at the gate running away.
Right. Yeah, it's true. So it feels as if a lot of the resistance that these protagonists come up against seems to fold pretty easily to kind of this first push towards their defenses. So I don't know. Maybe that's the way the grandfather is trying to read this story to the son, to the grandson. So maybe it is he's adding a little bit of his own kind of artistic flair. It doesn't look like it's a very short book, but he seems to get through it pretty quickly. And so maybe he kind of fudges some of the scenes a little bit to play in his favor to be able to tell the story that maybe he wants to tell.
Yeah, with going back to the grandfather and child and kid, I think that kid is a very good. He's very good about just like saying what the audience is thinking.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it definitely, I think, those two add a lot to the story in that regard. Of just, it kind of helps not take the movie so seriously.
Right. Yeah. Even in this scene where everything seems to be lost, and Princess Buttercup is marrying Prince Humperdinck, and the boy cuts in. Whoa! You're telling the story wrong. She can't marry Prince Humperdinck.
Yeah.
So, as the audience, wanting to, mind racing, trying to think through, okay, how are they going to get out of this?
Yeah.
What are they going to do? How is Wesley going to be able to come back somehow and rescue her? And of course, it's just this dream sequence of hers. Yeah. So thankfully for both the audience and the grandson, they're able to not have to deal with that conundrum just yet.
Right. So one thing that I did want to talk about was the costume and set in this movie, because they're really well done.
Yeah. Have a very nice, kind of authentic feel to it. Yeah.
And even like sets that are just like in one shot are like very well done, because like the one shot where after Inigo and Fezzik find each other again,
right,
and they're looking for the man in black, they're just kind of like walking through this village, and it's only there for like under a minute.
Couple scenes.
But it's a very well constructed set.
Right. Yeah. And we see that same kind of village when they have the brute squad going through and trying to arrest everyone and try and gather all those people up. And again, it's just kind of that very short clip, very short scene of this setting, but they have all of this. They have that bridge and everything. This large wagon that they've developed to hold these people that they've captured, so to speak, arrested, so to speak. So yeah, a very nice amount of detail spent on creating this environment and this atmosphere within the movie.
Yes, I think they did a very good job.
Yeah. Moving into another setting that I thought was a very interesting one was the forest with the fire pits and the lightning sand and the ROUSs, the fire swamp. Yes, fire swamp. And I thought it was strange looking back when I watched this as a child. They talk about the ROUSs, rodents of unusual size, and I'm thinking, what in the world? That sounds terrifying. And then immediately after that, he gets tackled by this rodent. But on this most recent watch through, just watching it the other day, we saw the rodents before they mentioned that. Yeah. And I didn't remember that from watching it, 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if this was like a remastered edition that kind of like...
They were always there.
Yeah, that's strange. The way, as a child, the memory maybe paints over such terrors of the ROUSs. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they exist.
No, not at all. Yeah. One thing that they talk about quite often throughout the film is this idea of true love.
Yes.
So they start off with Buttercup and Wesley embracing, and Wesley is preparing to leave to find his fame and fortune. Yeah. And Buttercup worries she's never going to see him again. He says, well, this is true love. How often do you think this happens? Yeah. This doesn't happen every day. And they become separated and they find themselves back together again. And when we're at the wedding chapel between the marriage of Prince Humperdinck and Princess Buttercup, we have, again, this concept of true love.
Yeah.
And so we have this definition of true love that is brought up again and again throughout the movie, and whether that is following what we as the audience would believe to be kind of like this idea of true love or not, whether it follows the ideal is something to be brought into question.
Yeah, I definitely feel like this movie follows a very fairy tale view of true love.
Yeah, that of course they have to live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Right? And even the young grandson says, well, that's the way the story should be.
Yeah.
So they have a very idealistic understanding of this is the way it should be, this is the way true love works, and maybe it works out that way for some people.
Yeah. I want to say something about not Mad Max. Miracle Max.
Miracle Max, yeah. Miracle Max. Very interesting character.
Yeah.
I feel like he's kind of out of place somewhat. It reminds me a little bit of Back to the Future Doc, this kind of very frazzled kind of mad scientist kind of character who, can we trust this person? Can we take this person seriously? Does this person know what they're doing?
Yeah.
So I thought that this Miracle Max character is kind of an interesting person that they introduce. And of course, they could have just had him as this plot point of how do we bring Wesley back from this death or almost death, so to speak. But they introduce his wife, and they have all these other characteristics of these people, which seems to be a pretty common thing in some of the other films we've talked about, and also in this one, where
just fleshing out the
characters. Yeah, just adding these details.
I definitely think it was very interesting that this was a Billy Crystal cameo type thing,
right?
Because it definitely didn't need to be, but it just gave a lot of character. Because I think a lot of people, that's like one of their favorite scenes of this movie. It's just has so much character to it.
Such an enjoyable scene. Yeah, so it has a lot of that comedy connected with a lot of that kind of tension and seriousness of, what is Wesley going to be able to be brought back? Is he going to be able to save the day? They've worked so hard. They've come so far to be able to do this. Will they be able to succeed in bringing him back? Yeah.
During that dream sequence, the prince says a line that his father said, "Love her as I loved her."
Yes.
He says that around the time he's introducing Buttercup, so it sounds kind of interesting there. But I think the father would be the king would be talking about the country there. But it's just kind of interesting the way that the movie puts it. Yeah. It just feels like he's talking about Buttercup.
Right. That is true. Yeah, because that's a very interesting interpretation. When I was watching it, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I love Buttercup as I loved either her being Buttercup or her being who's to be the new queen.
Yeah.
But yeah, thinking about her, a lot of times we do personify the kingdom, the country, as this feminine kind of thing. Love.
Yeah.
The country we talk about, like the sea, the mare.
Yes.
As this feminine idea. So yeah, it's a very interesting interpretation. Love her the way I loved her. Love the country as I love the country. We don't really get very much background of how the king ran the country.
Yeah,
so I guess we don't get much of an idea of how he loved. So that'd be an interesting thing to look into and analyze a little bit more.
Yeah, but definitely, like you see when the prince is like starting to get, because it feels like the prince is like starting to get more power, like before this movie starts, and he's trying to start a war throughout the entirety.
Right.
So maybe the king before him was king of peace.
Yeah.
And now the prince is trying to undermine that by making it look like the Guildarians have started a war.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I wonder, what his purpose was, what his intent was. I mean, is he just wanting to have this warmongering kind of power? Is he trying to create some kind of reason to be able to take more lands from the Guildarians?
Yeah. What
kind of purpose is there to start a war, and why frame the Guildarians to create this war?
Yeah. Well, the way I saw it was that he was framing them because he didn't want to start it because his kingdom would kind of turn him
against
for that.
Him.
So he wanted his kingdom to be like, we need to go to war for this.
Yeah.
As for why he wanted to start the war, you do see Count Rugen and him kind of have this fascination on pain and all of that. They built like the torture machine.
That's right. Too. Yeah, we have that torture machine. So there is that sadistic kind of fascination with death and pain that they're researching, and they're creating this definitive study on. So that could be a very very intense look into why they want this control over the Guildarians. Maybe they need some kind of bodies to test subjects. So yeah, some kind of hostile takeover there. I feel like that's something that would be very if we were to have some kind of remake of this movie and make it a darker version of it, going into like more like maybe a Game of Thrones. They'll have to bleep that out. Game of Thrones kind of thing where we have all of this political intrigue that they could have interjected into the story. You know, why are they interested in this torture? Is there some kind of like necromantic kind of fascination? Do they want to live forever? Do they want to? Maybe Prince Humperdinck has someone that he truly loves and he wants to bring back from the dead. All these other things that could be, but I digress. We're getting off topic.
I do feel like a huge part of what made this movie work was just the tone of being more lighthearted, having that darkness like underneath.
Right. But never really allowing that to overpower some of the brighter themes. But we do have Wesley, when he is still masked as the Man in Black, tell to Princess Buttercup, life is pain.
Yes, anyone who says differently is selling something.
Exactly. So we see even Wesley has kind of that darker kind of thoughts and these darker kind of ideas, feelings, maybe due to this betrayal that he feels that Buttercup has.
Or spending like 4 years under a guy that says he'll kill him in the morning.
Kill him the very next day. That's true. Yeah. I feel like that would kind of turn any person, this fear of being killed the very next morning for several years.
Yeah.
So another thing that I like to talk about, and I feel like it's something that we in general like to think about, is the music.
Yes.
We're both kind of somewhat musically inclined. So it's something that I feel creates a very emotional connection with the audience to the story and to the movie, and creates a very nice atmosphere. And even if you're not musically inclined, even if you don't know much about music, you still can have that emotional connection. And I thought that was something that they did really well, having a very, very basic kind of soundtrack, but it fits very nicely with the kind of simplistic environment, especially in that opening scene when we just have kind of like this guitar flute kind of thing going on with Wesley and Buttercup at the very beginning.
Yeah, it definitely has a few different, like the theme when Fezzik and Inigo are talking a lot. It has this more comical beat to it that it does help set the tone as well.
Yeah, we have a lot of those kinds of motifs that connect us to the different characters when we see them. Yeah. And
then when they're in the fire swamp, there's like this moment when they're coming out of the lightning sand.
Right.
And it just is very triumphant.
Right, triumphant, yeah. So looking back on it, it seems like just like a normal, well, they saved themselves, but they pulled themselves up. But with that music with it, it makes a completely different kind of feel to it. So like if they had a very different kind of piece, maybe one that was much softer, more subtle, it would have a different feel where, okay, they're pulling themselves up and they're trying to stay hidden from these ROUSs. But here it's kind of having this feeling of he was able to dive in and save her. So it's a very different kind of feeling that we get from that scene. Yeah.
And going back to Fezzik and Inigo's relationship together, we hadn't really talked about that a lot. We kind of mentioned it, but I think this movie definitely does a very good job of showing them being really good friends. Like you really feel their connection.
Yeah. I think it was interesting, especially when we first see them and they start doing their rhyming. it feels as if Inigo is kind of leading Fezzik in, like he's making a lot of fuss and giving him kind of that opportunity to try and create that rhyme.
Yeah.
So it's almost kind of like a game that's kind of like a newer kind of thing that they're trying to learn. Like not Andre. Moving on to the actual actor, and then Fezzik the Giant, they make it almost seem as if he's kind of this dim-witted kind of character, but he actually has a lot of the ability to come up with these rhymes. So seeing that he has a lot more forethought than especially Vicini gives him credit for.
And I like how they kind of are shown to look out for each other.
Right.
Because Fezzik first says that he isn't really comfortable with killing Buttercup, and then Vicini's kind of like, I didn't hire you for this. Mm-hmm. But then Inigo comes in right after that and says, I agree with Fezzik, And then later, when Vicini and Fezzik are leaving and Inigo's going to face the Man in Black, Fezzik says, people in masks are not to be trusted.
Yeah. So there's definitely that budding friendship between the two of them. Yeah. Even though this is just a job that we're doing to pay the bills, trying to stay employed, but they have a very nice connection, and we see that come back when Inigo Montoya has returned back to the beginning. He says, I've gone back to the beginning. This is where we started the mission. And the Brute Squad comes and is trying to force him out. And then the person who is the Brute Squad, Fezzik the Giant, shows up and they're reunited. So we see that connection. We see that friendship even further into the movie where they reunite.
Another relationship that Inigo has in this movie is with his father, kind of, because it's all about him avenging his father's death. His whole entire story is trying to avenge his father's death, and he keeps repeating that phrase. Kind of ends up being his mantra. My name is Inigo Montoya. If you killed my father, prepare to die. Right. He has that, and he has that look when he looks far off into the distance as he's saying this. It's as if he can visualize the moment when he meets that six-fingered man again, and be able to avenge his father, repay his father for his father's death. When we get to that scene, Count Rugen, as we were saying earlier, plays dirty and runs away, throwing the dagger right as Inigo Montoya comes down the stairs, comes around that corner, and he seems defeated and gets stabbed a couple times by Count Rugen, but finds that strength anyway, draws upon that strength through his memory of his father, which he'd also drawn upon that strength when they were searching for the Man in Black earlier. In the forest looking for the knotted tree. The knotted tree, They just thumped the albino's head, thumped him a little too hard, and needed to try and get a little bit of guidance. So Inigo almost prays to his father, asking for guidance. I like the shot there too, because the camera pans down and you see the sun coming through the trees, and it kind of gives this halo to Inigo. Right, adds a very nice kind of shot where you get that kind of heavenly feel from him looking up to his father, trying to not physically, but spiritually try and reconnect and get some kind of answer from his father. And the music there also kind of gives a mystical, and kind of has a lot of I don't know if they have bells maybe or something, but it definitely gives it a very interesting feel. Right. And then back to the fight between Inigo and the Count. Yes. After the Count stabs him a couple times and he starts fighting back, Inigo actually gives Count Rugen the same wounds.
Yeah.
And the shoulder, well, like above the heart,
and
shoulder,
the arm,
and both the cheeks, and then in the gut.
In the gut, yes, yeah. We see it's almost as if at that point he was toying with him, like he'd gotten this second wind, this revival of energy, this resurgence, and all that training comes back in such a way that he's able to overpower Count Rugen to give him the same exact wounds, completely outplaying him, and even gives that illusion of a hope to Count Rugen, saying,
"Offer me money,
give me power, give me everything you have." Yeah, and then the final thing that he wants, the only thing that Inigo Montoya wanted, was his father. All he wanted was to have his father back, and that's something that he never could get back. But at the same time, I don't think he ever really completely lost his father. He had that connection to his father even after his father's death. He still had that connection to his father, that he was constantly thinking about him. He was constantly looking to him for guidance and how to push forward with his life and create that drive.
And he was carrying the sword that his father made, like the best sword
that beautiful sword. Yeah. Which, with all those gems and all the detail put into that sword, I wonder, what kind of sword maker was this father, that he had access to such resources, but didn't have the pull to be able to finesse that deal with the Count, and somehow was able to just be slaughtered for not giving the sword. Again, a lot of backstory that would be very fascinating to learn about and look into, but alas, it's not to be.
So the story has a lot of similarities with fairy tales.
Right. Yeah.
Would you say that this is a fairy tale? Or?
I would say yes. I think that this follows a lot of the plot of fairy tales, where we have this love interest, we have this protagonist and this female, that we have that interest between the two, and there's some kind of conflict where they're separated, and then the rising action to where they're able to try and be reunited, and this conflict continues to build, and we do get this happily ever after ending. Usually with the fairy tale, we have that once upon a time start in that first line, but we didn't quite have that in this film or in the book that it's supposed to be based off of.
Right.
Another thing that we see in the fairy tales a lot of time are fairies or magic or elves or some kind of mystical kind of setting, and we don't necessarily see magic or fairies or anything, but we do have this Miracle Max that brings Wesley back to life. So we do have those aspects that I would say allow it to fall easily into the camp of being a fairy tale.
I don't know if I would actually consider this a fairy tale. For me, a fairy tale, a lot of times I just would think of more older stories.
Right.
But then even I consider it different from even the Disney type fairy tales.
It's
just, I feel like it's a lot more, I don't even know the word for it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It never really felt like a fairy tale to me. It felt like something just on its own.
It's a separate kind of thing.
But it definitely does. I feel like it kind of deconstructs a fairy tale almost.
True. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Incorporates some of the aspects of a fairy tale, but then manipulates them in such a way that it kind of changes the way we might consider something to be or not to be a fairy tale. Yeah, I could agree with that.
But I would consider this more of a comedy.
Okay.
Which is actually kind of strange because I don't really like comedies typically.
Right.
But I think this this movie and a lot of the other comedies that I actually do like, I think they're good because they don't really focus on the comedy. They have a lot of things that make you laugh, but they're good because it has a story that it follows, and you care about the characters. And
right.
It's not so much about the humor.
Yeah. That I would agree with that as well. That a lot of comedies, a lot of time that I find myself not enjoying, tend to solely focus on comedy, and there's not very much depth to the story or the characters. There's not much growth necessarily.
Yes.
And this, while it does have a lot of those comedy aspects and it has a lot of funny characters and interactions, there's definitely a lot of growth and a lot of change within the story. So there's a lot more to it than just the comedy. Yeah. The last line of the film, the last thing that the grandfather, going back to kind of wrap up the frame story, the last thing we see is the grandfather saying to the grandson. The grandson asks him, "Oh, can you come back tomorrow? Can you come and read this to me again? Spend more time with me?" And the grandfather replies, "As you wish." So again, kind of bringing it full circle to the beginning of the film, where we see when he says "as you wish," he's meaning "I love you."
Yeah.
So it's a very nice kind of way to wrap up the story of showing this grandfather cares about his grandson and wants to spend time with them. And
it brings back elements from before in the story. Yeah.
Right. So I felt like that was a very, very nice way to kind of tie the bow on this movie and kind of lead us to this happy ending, both for Wesley and Buttercup and Inigo and Fezzik and all these other characters, but also to give us a nice happy ending for the grandson and the grandfather as well.
Yeah, I definitely like that the kid had a arc over this.
Yes. He starts off not really wanting to listen to this story. He thinks it's just going to be a kissing book, and he doesn't like it. And then when it gets to the end, he says, "Oh, I don't mind. You can read. You can read this about the kissing part. I don't mind as much anymore." So we see a very nice change in his demeanor there as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
That will do it for this video. We'd like to thank Mill Eastep for creating our theme.
And join us in the comments section below to go over any questions or add to the discussion of The Princess Bride.
And subscribe so you don't miss our next video, where we will be discussing Casablanca.
This has been FoxTales Movie Club. Thanks for watching. I'm Tony.
And I'm Fox, and we will see you in the next video.